Welcome everyone to the captive audience. Sorry, we're starting just a few minutes late. Right when I was launching at 6, I had a nice little computer crash, and hopefully it doesn't happen now. And if it does, just hang in there. I'll be back in a few minutes after another restart. I got some stuff to fix. I guess I have something in common with X today. Elon Musk, of course, had confirmed that there was a big outage of Twitter X due to a massive cyber attack. And from what I heard, they said that it was actually traceable back to Ukraine, but I don't know. I'm waiting to hear more reports. Um, I do know that you can't always trust what appears to be the source because it would, of course, be in the interests of Russia to get people to be angry at Ukraine. So I just know first reports are often wrong. And so let's hang in there. Yes, I'm wearing another hat today. This is the hat I wore on November 3rd, 2020. I think that was the day, whatever election day it was. I wore it that night. I was on TV along with Jeff Reynolds, the gentleman that was on last week with us for a really good show. And just have to say that this is the hat that I wore that night as we watched election returns come in. And, Jeff and me in particular, actually, were the only people on a regular basis. And of course, I think to some extent, then Oregon Republican Chairman Bill Currier that went on TV defending President Trump. And we continued to defend President Trump and remain critical of the election and the Biden administration all through January and on into the Biden administration to follow. So I just thought it might be nice to introduce another hat to you guys today. Yes, so there was that massive cyber attack. There's been some other interesting news today. I think nationally, it looks like Blinken, blankety blank Blinken, as I like to call him, the former Secretary of State, had a security clearance pulled. Same with Jake Sullivan and several other prominent Democrats. And it was Tulsi Gabbard has pulled those security clearances, and along with the other 51 signers of the Hunter Biden disinformation letter. So we're finally getting some action on that because, in all honesty, we know that they lied. They know that they lied, and they don't need access to any secrets. It's sad that they ran the country for 4 years, but in all honesty, we've got to even go much further than this to take action. Among the others who also had these security clearances pulled were some of the people that did some of the investigating that led to the Russia hoax, the garbage charges and convictions that they attempted in New York with Alvin Bragg and the and several others. Andrew Weissman lost his thing, and they are no longer providing the presidential daily brief to former President Brandon. And I think that's good because he could be an unknowing leaker. Like, he could have people surrounding him. The same ones that, did you hear this last week? That there was a review of documents that have been signed supposedly by Joe Biden. Hi, Pam. Hi, Nicholas. Hi, Lori. That they investigated, and they said the only document that they could certify with in the past, I think it was a couple of years, that was signed actually by Joe Biden was when he signed a document saying he was going to no longer pursue being the nominee for the Democrat Party. That had his signature. The other ones were signed with something called an auto pen. And I think it's fair to say that whoever controlled the auto pen controlled Joe Biden. And there may be a real vulnerability here. I'm trying to find the article because I know it's here someplace. I know I saw it. And the auto pen isn't really Joe Biden signing it unless you can show that he activated the auto pen or gave contemporaneous permission to use an auto pen for his signature. And you have to ask why somebody who's capable of being president would need an auto pen to sign all of these things. As you've noticed, President Trump signs his own stuff and likes to show that when he signs the executive order, he shows it around. So, I hope that we get to the bottom of this, because what that could mean, this is very important, what that could mean is that everything that could not be proven was signed by Joe Biden is invalid, including all the pardons, the bills, everything where you can't show that it was here. I found the article. It's the Oversight Project Investigation is what it's called, an investigative arm of the Heritage Foundation, alleged that excessive use of an auto pen signature by Joe Biden while he was in office. Joe Biden. And we gathered every office document we could find with Biden's signature over the course of his presidency. All used the same auto pen signature except for the announcement that the former president was dropping out of the race last year. So the Missouri Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, called for the Justice Department to investigate whether Biden's cognitive decline allowed unelected staff to push through radical policy without his knowing approval. It's bad enough that they push through radical policies. It's even worse if they were just doing it and this vegetable was sitting over here not really authorizing any of it. And it says executive orders, pardons, and all other actions are unconstitutional and legally void if they cannot certify that he actually authorized and signed those documents. Goody. Other national news, Secretary Rubio announced today that he has ended, because he is the acting director of the USAID, since the USAID has essentially been brought to a halt. Its programs under review and a bunch of people canned. And so he's the acting director, and he said that 83% of the programs operated through the United States Agency for International Development did not serve American interests. After a 6-week review, we are officially canceling 83% of the programs at USAID. The 52 contracts that are now canceled spent tens of billions of dollars in ways that did not serve, and in some cases even harmed, the core national interests of the United States. He confirmed that the remaining 1,000 programs would be administered directly by the State Department. So they're just going to bypass all the treasonous morons that were at USAID sending money to, transgender plays in Ireland and DEI in Brazil, and all just endless garbage that, frankly, ticked off the countries to which the money was being sent, which is not good for U.S. national security in the least. It's quite harmful. So let me just post that, because I just posted it. You can read the story, and you can go to Just the News and indicate if Senator Rubio went too far. And you can say, yes, he went too far. 1% is what I'm seeing so far. No, 41%. Not far enough. 58%. Love it. Get in there. Get your vote in. Let's send a message. And so, there's a new sheriff in town at the FBI, right? Not only in the White House, but at the FBI, Kash Patel. And the FBI has done something that hasn't been done for quite a long time. even going back to the first Trump administration and previous administrations before that. And not because President Trump wanted it this way, but because the deep state did, which was they used to drag their feet and sometimes even ignore subpoenaed documents, subpoenaed by Congress. Well, the FBI is trying to restore trust by delivering subpoenaed documents ahead of a deadline that was issued by the House of Representatives. And the first batch of the FBI's inquiries into threats to school administrators and pipe bombs discovered near the Republican and Democrat national headquarters on January 6, 2021 are part of the documents that have been delivered. Jim Jordan is the House Judiciary Committee chairman, and the FBI has been subpoenaed. And former FBI Director Christopher Wray repeatedly failed to produce the necessary materials. Now that we've got a real director, it's moving along expeditiously. And they're also going to dig into the Bureau's interactions with social media companies about regarding the alleged interference in the 2020 election. They are trying to restore faith. And this is just phase one of restoring trust, they say. There's more to come, and they'll have an update soon. So, thank the Lord that we finally got some real patriots, real believers in the rule of law overseeing our federal government. Yes, I did. Did I post the Otto Penn story? Let me just see. Yes, I did. Good. And I think I posted the Tulsi Gabbard story about pulling. No, I didn't. Let me post that. It's quite a good one. And it tells you a thing or two about what kind of people we had running our foreign policy and, frankly, endangering the country. President Trump and his administration. Do you remember the CBP-1 app? So we've talked about this. I've been to the border and seen the border, but I also learned last September, a lot about why there was a reduction in the traffic coming across that wall. And it's because they were diverting them to the ports of entry. Now you might say, well, how can they do that? Well, that was because they had them filling out applications and scheduling essentially an appointment to enter the United States on an app that the Customs and Border Patrol produced. And President Trump shut that thing down at like 12:01 p.m. After he was sworn in. It was literally like, boom, off. And now they've brought the app back, but you're going to love why. They've modified the app to make it easier for illegal migrants to easily deport. The app now offers a, quote, intent to depart, unquote, feature, as well as features for legal travel in the U.S. And so this is going to be a way to automate the process of people, I guess you would say, self-deporting or claiming that they're going to leave and identifying themselves. And you know what? That might offer an opportunity for some leniency for some of these folks as they go, because they're saying, I'm going to leave, instead of, fleeing to a sanctuary state and attempting to have Tina Kotek protect them, like the 650,000 criminals that the Customs and Border Patrol disclosed had been let into the country during the Biden administration. 650,000 people with criminal records. So this is great news. We're reversing the flow. And if an app can help us get people in, we can turn that off and reverse it and automate the process of them departing. Great news, isn't it? Actually, I see you guys are joking about that a robot signed Joe Biden stuff. Well, somebody ordering the robot signed it. And if that's not Joe Biden, then it is not signed. It is illegal and unconstitutional. So anyway, the Democrats are in full mode, right? They're going crazy. But there's some news about Oregon's congressional members, past and present. We just learned that Lori Chavez Dreamer, the former congresswoman from the 5th District, who lost very narrowly to Janelle Bynum in 2024, was nominated, of course, and has now been confirmed as the labor secretary. And she got a lot of Democrat votes. Some say that's a good thing. Some are not so sure, but 67 to 32. And I haven't had a chance really to look into the breakdown of the vote that actually took place, but she is the one that President Trump has nominated. One of the few people that's ever served in a cabinet secretary position from the state of Oregon. And it's been quite a while since I think any have served from the state of Oregon. So congratulations to Lori. Obviously, she's going to have her work cut out for her, but there's a different attitude towards the working class in the state, in the country, as well, by Republicans and also towards Republicans. So let's see if this actually helps that. There's some folks that have expressed concern about warming up to labor unions or making it easy, or maybe even making it more compulsory to join unions, or etc. I don't know. I got to watch some of Lori's testimony, and she was pretty adamant that that's actually not the case with her. So we're gonna have to, I think, give her the benefit of the doubt, and she's going to get out there and do what President Trump wants to have done with regard to the Labor Department. By the way, the Labor Department has an important role in monitoring statistics and reporting them. And there's actually been, so there was a jobs report just this past week that showed that there's some gain, that unemployment has remained steady. But then President Trump did an interview over the weekend where he expressed some concern that he actually confirmed that maybe we're going to have some potential impact from some of the tariffs. Now, he said that in the short run, tariffs can have that kind of an impact, but in the long run, it's going to mean a healthier U.S. economy, where some of these businesses that, by the way, have been put out of business or constrained from selling in other countries because those other countries have had tariffs on us for a very long time. I believe the European Union has somewhere shy of $300 billion in tariffs against U.S. products. And so all the whining when we do the same to them to send a message is like, look, we've taken the kick me sign off our back here, as Uncle Sam, the one that Joe Biden put on there, and then proudly tripped around the world, falling all over himself to please foreign leaders. That kick me sign is gone. So we're going to have to see what happens from here, because I know that it's not meant to be a long-term strategy to maintain tariffs. It really is to compel these other countries to move towards freer and more honest trade with the United States, because we're very competitive globally. In some industries, we're the dominant player, and they're just putting a tariff on us to see if they can't damage our businesses. That actually, if those countries don't want tariffs, they can get rid of theirs, and we can go back to fair trade. Nearly everybody that talks about free trade now talks about fair trade in the same breath. And it's pretty clear what that means. Now, I don't know if it's actually going to have an impact on the economy. All I know is that whatever happens with the economy, if anything negative occurs, the Democrats are going to immediately try to do everything they can to assign blame to President Trump and see if they can't win back their credibility by trashing President Trump. You can count on it. That's what they do. That's how they roll. And sorry, but that is what we're going to have to be ready to respond to, because they're just going to do it. And by the way, I don't know if you heard, but there is rumor that he's going to sign an executive order to dismantle the education department. And what's hilarious is the education department being gone is not the end of education. It's the end of a bureaucracy that has absorbed tens of billions of dollars, sent hundreds of millions to DEI, and entirely failed at the job. In fact, we've seen a dramatic failure in education statistics. Oregon is case in point. Now, Oregon has also done its own work to be a failure at education, at public education. But, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because the report says that we may see something very soon. And I don't know the full extent of it, but just stay tuned. So, yeah, I know that's all they do, but they're desperately trying to figure out how to get back in and regain credibility with voters, and they don't have any. So I guess that's tough. Phooey on them, but we are going to have to be ready to negate their counterattacks. Let's remember, these idiots showed up with egg cartons and held up egg cartons at the State of the Union or the speech to Congress last week, because they were desperately trying to assign blame for the price of eggs to President Trump. He's been in office for 5 weeks and 6 weeks, and they're trying to blame him for something that went up 50% in price just before he was inaugurated. So the Democrats are going to try to do this, and we have to kind of blow up their little attempts to misinform the public. Our work is never done in that regard. Congressman Cliff Bentz, this is the other news, came out and was very clear. He said, "I support President Trump's efforts to cut spending." And, they've got all these people showing up at his town halls and screaming at him. It's called Indivisible. It's a group that organizes progressives that are in rural areas. And it's usually not very many people, but you can get a couple hundred progressives that apparently got nothing better to do. I don't know if they're collecting government checks. A lot of them are old and very old and retired and very cranky, and think they're going to lose their Social Security and Medicare because of this, even though if they want fraud to continue, then the continuance of fraud is going to threaten their Social Security and Medicare. But Congressman Bentz is very clear. He is standing with the administration, and that doesn't mean he's not paying attention to what's going on, but he sees an opportunity to dramatically reduce the waste, fraud, and abuse, and gain savings that we need in a country where we got a $2 trillion trade deficit. He talked a little bit about the Ukraine war and, visited some of that, but he said, "I'm very, very happy that President Trump is doing his best to negotiate a settlement of it, because people have died because of what Putin's done, and the war needs to end." It's one of those situations where hopefully they can negotiate a permanent end of the war, he said. And, this is sort of an Oregonian article, so it's a bunch of gotcha things. But, I think we're going to find that this common sense is going to continue to be supported by the American people, and the Democrats are going to do everything they can to make sure that everybody around the country panics and thinks that the world's going to come to an end. And remember how that worked for Chicken Little. The world was coming to an end under Biden, and the media was more than happy to pretend like nothing was going on. President Otto Penn was running everything. We're now finding out. But the Democrats know that they really can't talk about their policies and their failures, so they're spending all of their time projecting and redirecting towards President Trump. Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield said he's joined a coalition of 20 attorneys general seeking reinstatement of what are called probationary workers, federal workers that were hired, and he says they're reckless and illegal mass firings, but the courts have not stood in the way of this at all. So obviously, there will be these lawsuits and these challenges, but this is Dan Rayfield trying to make himself more popular by virtue signaling on something that, by the way, the last time I checked, the Attorney General of Oregon, not in charge of anything in the federal government, may not even have any standing at all, actually. But he said that he starts relating these stories of people where it was an inconvenient thing that they were let go from the federal government, and he's claiming that they're overstepping the constitutional authority of the presidency by curtailing funding that was allocated by Congress. But we're going to get to the bottom of this, because I just heard today there was an interview that Elon Musk did on Fox Business, I think. And I'm trying to remember his name, but he's the guy who used to be in the administration, actually, at one point. And he was an economic advisor. And he said, apparently the talk is that they're going to be able to guarantee that any of these cuts that are taking place, the Democrats try to challenge, will be sustained by Congress through a process called rescission, where the president can stop the spending and Congress can confirm that spending reduction is going to happen by a simple majority vote. That you don't have to overcome a filibuster to cut spending. And it does mean that you have to have enough Republicans to do it, but let the Democrats go ahead and continue to vociferously defend waste, fraud, abuse, spending out of control, DEI garbage. And look, all this reduction in force that's taking place in the federal government, it hasn't happened for years. Meanwhile, in the real world, where they can't force people, force people to pay them taxes, businesses have had to reduce staff. And it goes down, it goes back up, it goes down. The composition changes of the workforce within private sector companies. The federal government hasn't had to do it at all. They just keep spending and growing and spending and growing and spending and growing. And now we can see they've also entirely failed to solve many of the problems, because they weren't even spending the money on problems people expected them to, much less on something Congress set them out to do. So, but probationary policy employees are ones who have been in their position for only 1 to 2 years. And that's the nature of these employment contracts, is that they can be let go at and by the way, the president has declared a spending emergency, as I recall, which means that he is at the maximum influence that he can have in trying to get federal spending under control and restore the stability of our system here, because it is insane. The stuff that they're finding now, I think I told you last week that all those people that weren't indicated to be dead in the Social Security database who are above the age of 115, thousands of them got SBA loans to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, Small Business Administration loans. The other thing that was just revealed, I saw it, was it earlier today or late yesterday, that 11-year-olds, a bunch of people who were only 11 years old in the database, thousands of them received SBA loans. Now, if there's a perfectly good explanation why 11-year-olds are receiving small business administration loans, we better hear it. But the Democrats are defending all of that. They're defending it. And they have plenty of opportunity to say, well, we don't like this, but we do like that. No, they're just totally against it. They don't want to do anything about this stuff. And the Democrats themselves here in Oregon are lining up to make their voices heard and speak out. Representative Salinas of the 6th District has been speaking up against research funding cuts at the Stand Up for Science March. She needs to stand up for math. Math says that when you go and you take a grant, you've got X amount of grant money, right? Like, let's say you got $1 billion, and you decide that instead of 15%, which is more the private sector norm for administrative overhead coverage from a grant. So you got the grant for the work, and then you also provide a certain percentage to cover the increased overhead of executing what the grant was there to fund. In the private sector charitable donations, 15%. The federal government had been, until recently, under an order by the Trump administration, the federal government had been granting up to 51% of the grant additional to cover administrative overhead. They were doing it with like OHSU and these other groups. That's literally like these entities that say, well, we need money to do this research. And then they turn around and they say, by the way, we want you to pay for half of all the cost of us doing existing as an entity to do this research. Totally unreasonable. This is what Representative Salinas is defending. She needs to learn some math. And what is the effect of getting rid of the lavish administrative overhead funding? Well, if you've only got $1 billion to make grants, you can make more grants for more research instead of subsidizing OHSU and these other entities. And they are leaving out the information when they do these protests that what's really being cut from these grants, with the exception of some of the DEI garbage and the trans making mice trans and stuff like that we know we've been hearing about here recently, they're leaving out the fact that what these institutes and these research universities are losing is the subsidy from the federal government to their administrative overhead. They're losing a percentage of that, but they are leaving out that detail and just saying they're cutting our research grants. We can't do any research. We'll be able to do more research. That is the truth. And so, keep talking out of both sides of your mouth, Representative Salinas. I would remind you that even though you didn't face probably the toughest race in Congress, you didn't win by very much this last time. And so keep talking, because somebody's going to follow this up. Somebody's going to compete with you. And you might be looking to eat your words in 2026 and beyond. So Representative Maxine Dexter, however, in the 3rd congressional district, the one who replaced the bow-tied buffoon, what's his name? Earl Blumenauer. She is in a safe district. And so she can literally spout off and say whatever she wants. She'll probably face no consequences for it. The only thing she could do wrong is upset Antifa, I guess, by saying something that they don't like. But she is discussing cuts and the pushback from her and her fellow Democrats to the president's address to Congress last week. And you can go watch this. I'm not seeing a fair and balanced report where some counter opinion to Representative Dexter is being heard on KATU. I know I'd like to change that, so wish me luck with that. But in the meantime, Representative Dexter's out there blah, blah, blahing. And, Jeff Merkley Ron Wyden didn't even go to the speech. So apparently he thought he was just going to go and do a rally with Democrats during the speech. And I guess those are probably people who weren't going to watch the speech anyway. So thanks, Pam. Oregon Treasurer Steiner. She is a former state senator, and she was famous during the election last year for being the one who most narrowly won a statewide race in 2024, beating out Brian Boquist by only about 5 or 6%. But also she was famous for one other thing. She doesn't know anything about money or the Treasury. And that was stated early on in her race, and she proved it by opening her mouth and talking about what she thought was important. She said, well, she wanted to talk about the importance of unions, public employee unions, and abortion, because those are very important things for a treasurer who's maintaining the funds that are supposed to make sure that PERS can be paid for down the road. Anyway, she comes out and warns that tariffs will lead to price hikes and uncertainty. Okay, I'm not going to keep listening to her. Everybody knows that tariffs can cause an increase in prices, but they can also do something that Treasurer Steiner devoted her political career prior to being treasurer to, which is driving manufacturing and export businesses out of the state of Oregon by raising taxes on them and supporting more and more laws and regulations, making it impossible for them to do business here. So she should be concerned about the uncertainty she's already created and how to clear that up. If she's not concerned about it, then she needs to think about how this is going to affect her election prospects in the future, because she actually doesn't know anything about what she's doing. And let me see here. Now, for some reason, I can't paste this in. I want to paste this in. Okay, let's try that. There we go. That's Treasurer Steiner, who's apparently she's in front of a picture outside the Treasury building along Mill Creek. That must be where she thinks the money is. It's in that creek. I don't know. They must be burying it there. There's some good news. There's a big pushback from property owners in Eastern Oregon counties. They filed a lawsuit over the wildfire map. They filed that on Friday, I think it is. And Thibault Ellis is the lead trial attorney, and there is in the Oregon Property Owners Association, who I think used to be called Oregonians in Action, are leading this effort to challenge what is happening. It's a lawsuit against the Oregon Department of Forestry and the state forester, but it's really to get these maps, which have devastated the ability of people in areas that these maps, in many cases and completely erroneously, have labeled as wildfire high hazard areas. They can't get insurance. And also it's forcing new buildings that are being built to be fire resistant. Like they have to put metal roofs, and they're doing this in places where there hasn't been any wildfires for more than 100 years, and including places in Southern Oregon. And it's these properties, they've classified huge swaths of the state as high hazard in what they call the wildland urban interface. Well, when you hear the term wildland, just know that that's the Democrat term for what they want to be, is a place that in rural Oregon that you're not allowed to live, and they'll drive you out of there. They love the term wildlands because they want everything to be wild. They call it wilding. It's a verb. And so just keep an eye on this, because this is a lawsuit, but it's also something that's going to have massive political consequences. Yeah, I see you were mentioning about Wyden. Um, the point is he's slow. Yeah, he seems like he is 100 years. I think he's pretty old, but he's also. It's so nice of him to spend time with the people in Oregon because he's really in New York. He lives in New York and has for a long time. He lives in Manhattan with his wife and just comes back and every once in a while pretends to be an Oregonian. So um, at some point, people are going to figure that out. It and maybe boot him, or I think he's probably going to retire. And sad to say, I think we're going to probably get one of these very progressive Democrats like Suzanne Bonamici to replace him. So what the Democrats will do. Democrats are also busy at teeing up a gift for donors, their political donors, but they're going to charge you and me, the public. Democrats, because they have supermajorities in both chambers of the Congress and all 5 statewide offices, it's due in part to millions and millions in donations from public employee unions, labor unions. And in the spirit of payback, using your money, they're going to pay back, they're going to kick back to the unions. They're going to make it so that employees who strike will be eligible for unemployment benefits. So they willfully choose not to work. They do so in order to stop their to compel their employers to do things like give them more benefits and pay raises. But they willfully decide not to work. Senate Bill 916, which is about to head for a vote by the full Senate, will then allow them to collect unemployment benefits for deciding not to work. No other state in the country allows public employees to receive unemployment benefits while on strike. Oregon would be the first and the dumbest, as usual. And the costs are going to be massive. It means it's an incentive to people to go on strike. It's going to be not only a subsidy, but an incentive to go on strike. It says here the Unemployment Insurance Fund, which currently has $6.4 billion, supported by a tax on private companies. And it varies in part by how much the company uses it. Public employees who lay off workers must reimburse the fund for every dollar in benefits issued to their employees. So that public employers only have to pay into that fund when they lay workers off. Private companies have to pay into it all the time. That's why you see an unemployment insurance tax on your your pay stub when you get it. Well, now all of these entities are excited because they're going to be able to drain the unemployment insurance fund. Remember, the same one that they couldn't actually dispense benefits to private sector employees who were forcibly told they could not work during COVID. They want to drain that fund, which the government is not paying into, because someone decides they don't want to work in order to force the government to give them more money. You can see how dumb an idea this is. I think this could actually have real consequences for Democrats in the future, because that means that we're just going to have these government subsidized strikes over and over and over and over. And it says here that during the strike that took place in 2023 against the Portland Public Schools by the teachers, they were demanding concessions that were beyond anything the district could afford, and forced the district to, which actually the contract forced the district to cut positions in order to pay for more benefits, more money for teachers. And then but they said that would have cost Portland Public Schools another $8.7 million if unemployment benefits also had to be paid for while these people were striking. So the director of the Oregon Employment Department, David Gerstenfeld, has estimated that the bill for this had been in effect over the past 10 years would only cost 4.4 million. But then I just gave an example of how one strike against the Portland Public Schools would have almost doubled that. So he's admitted that his agency has no idea if workers will be more likely to strike or will strike for longer periods if they receive unemployment benefits in the meantime. No idea. This is the person in charge of the Oregon Employment Department, and he has no idea to the answer to that question. I mean, there's no way I'm going to believe that he's dumb, that dumb. He's a liar. He's lying. And because he knows, of course, that if you incentivize strikes by paying people to go on strike, you're going to get more strikes. But this guy, Dumbo, real moron. He's only a moron because he thinks we believe his lie. Not because he believes his lie. There's just no way. No one is that stupid, ultimately, especially when they are part of the machine and part of the problem. We were speaking about Ron Wyden. He's announced a couple of things. One, that he believes that we should do fair pay for truckers working overtime, and he's going to try to mandate that. But the last I checked, there's a shortage of truckers. So there's plenty of pressure for people to pay truckers more money. So he wants to mandate this, and it has to do with overtime. There is not support for this. There's just Democrats. Let me name a few of them. Richard Blumenthal, the guy with the stolen, the fake valor in the military. And let's see, Elizabeth Warren. So I don't know. We're got to see what happens. I'm very suspicious of it, but who knows? I just think that if there's already plenty of reasons for truckers to receive pay increases because there's a shortage, you can listen, and there's always like these advertisements of come work for us, we'll train you, et cetera, et cetera. I just think this is the slippery slope here, and I'm worried about it. But look, let's see what happens. Maybe somebody can go and ask Ron Wyden at one of his upcoming town halls in Prineville or Sisters. He's announced 2. And of course, if they are all rigged, then go there and complain about how they're rigged. Because my experience is they hand out numbers to people, and then they don't, they hand them out to the people they want to ask the questions before they ever offer that opportunity to anyone else. And he's going to be joined by Janelle Bynum, the congresswoman who we mentioned earlier narrowly defeated Lori Chavez DeRemer, who's now the labor secretary. 2 last warnings that I need to give you about some bills. Well, one is I want to, before I give you that warning, Oregon Republican lawmakers here in the state legislature are urging President Trump to issue an executive order mandating voter ID and citizenship verification for voter registrations. They said that they're very concerned about election integrity here in Oregon, and they think this might be the only way to remedy that. And it's a question of whether that's something that can be done by executive order, or there is a bill that passed the House but didn't pass the Senate when it was in Democrat hands in 2024 called the SAVE Act. And it's actually to require that the voter rolls be cleaned of any non-citizens. And it's the Safeguard American Voting Eligibility Act. And so that is at the federal level. There's actually a state a bill in the state legislature to address this too. And I believe it's going to get a hearing. So let me post this here for you. And then I know that the bill that is actually at the state level, let me see if I can find this real quick for you. Well, there's 3 bills. One good, which is House Bill 3470, and then actually 2 good bills. House Bill 3470, which is the one that requires verification of citizenship to vote. And we're in a state that admitted that there's 54,600 voters that they cannot verify citizenship for. And they knew that before the election last year. There's also another very good bill, which I hope gets somewhere, and that is it's Senate Bill 12, which would prohibit the first election that a judge faces to be listed as an incumbent, because they've been appointed to replace a judge, and they technically shouldn't be listed as an incumbent in that regard. And that's what the Democrats have in place, is this scheme that allows judicial elections to be biased towards an incumbent by having somebody resign before the end of their term and get replaced by the governor. I think it's somewhere more than 70 or 80% of all judicial positions have not been filled by an open seat election, but in fact by somebody who's then treated as an incumbent on the ballot, who was appointed to complete the term of a previous judge, and they just continue this. So over and over and over, they get appointed, and then the elections turn into this kind of sham where, the voters don't really, they get snowed by this whole system. So this bill is a good one. I hope that it gets the proper attention. And then the last bill here is a really disastrous bill. It's one that they're going to try to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote in school board elections. It is an obvious conflict of interest, and it's meant to take a bunch of people that have been propagandized by the teachers about unions and progressive politics, to then, under an authority figure who benefits directly from this vote, to go and then vote for whoever that teacher really wants, and the teachers union wants to get elected to the school boards. It must be bad. They must have to do this because people are getting fed up, and school boards could flip in many places in the state this election cycle here in May. But they're doing this because they know that they got problems, even in places that they used to like to pretend they controlled. Last two bills I want to tell you about quickly here before we wrap up. And I know it seems like we're running a little bit long, but we got started a little bit late. House Rules Committee got two bills up today. HJR 11, which raises the number of signatures required to qualify a measure for the ballot from 25% to 33%. And it takes it from the current rule of 6% of the people who voted in the last election for governor to 8%. And for constitutional changes, it wants to take it from 8% of the people who voted in the last election to 10%. Why? Because they know that this is one of the only ways we can stop them sometimes when they do something really stupid. We go and get the Constitution Amendment amended to stop them from doing this terrible stuff to our state, or pass statutes, or kill statutes. And don't forget, they traditionally, Democrats have not liked the ballot initiative process unless they can control the ballot title and lie to people like they did with Measure 110. And then the other bill is House Joint Resolution 3, which takes all this a step further by requiring a prospective petition to get a threshold of signatures from each of the 36 counties. Petitions must get 6% of the people who voted for them in the last election for governor. Now they want to make it as 6% from every county, which is nearly an impossible task. They want to kill this initiative petition system. Now, sadly, it looks like the bill has some bipartisan support. I don't know who the Republicans are that favor this, but and maybe it's the idea that there's liberal petitions that where this could be more difficult to get them on the ballot. But the Oregon Watchdog and the Taxpayers Association is saying that this is a big mistake to support this. And so we need to tell Democrats, and we need to tell our fellow Republicans that this is a bad idea. And Also, House Joint Resolution 3 would make it illegal for non-Oregonians to financially support or oppose an Oregon ballot measure. Now that is foolish and outright censorship. You know, you can't do that's. Not happening with candidates. Democrats would have a real problem if they couldn't get money from, Soros and people outside of the state for a lot of this stuff. So, um, there's a business owner actually in Vancouver, Washington. They give an example who owns 100 farm stands in Oregon. There's a ballot measure to ban farm stands. So under House Joint Resolution this man and his right to protect his Oregon employees from extinction with a simple $1 donation it would be illegal under House Joint Resolution 3. So, they are trying to kill the system. I hope there aren't too many Republicans agreeing with it, but this is a real concern. Get out there, let people know. And if they want to kill the initiative system, which is really part of what Oregon has been about here for the last 100 years, that's what these two bills are designed to do. So you can, if the hearings have already happened in some of these, you can actually submit written testimony online for 48 hours after that hearing. And you can do it by going to the article I just posted and then clicking on the bills themselves and offering your take. Anyway, I know I covered a lot of stuff tonight. I hope it was interesting, informative, and useful. Yeah, just auto pen the signatures. Exactly. I mean, if Biden can do it, why can't we? Exactly. What happens if Eastern Oregon goes to Idaho? I think it's a very, very good protest. It's not a great idea because, by the way, it's almost impossible to do. It's not as simple as a county saying, I'm leaving. They have to get permission of the state. They have to get permission of adjacent states, and I believe Congress. All of it. And I don't even know if it can be done in the Senate without if the filibuster would stand in the way. But you can see it's almost impossible to do. Plus, there are some consequences that are pretty negative for the counties in Oregon that would leave. Now, maybe I think it's a sign that when a third of the counties in the state want a divorce from the state, maybe the state should wake up and take notice. But what happens if they go to Idaho? I just think it's very unlikely that it'll happen. But in the meantime, I think it is a great way to let Democrats know that they have lost complete faith and trust in the people of those counties. Anyway, thank you, everyone, for joining me here tonight. Tomorrow night, I'm going to have a special guest, a very good guest, and I hope you check him out. It's Jeff Krupp, who leads the Oregon Citizens Lobby. I posted some of the things from them. In fact, I'm going to post a couple of more articles here real quick, and you can take a look at them, and we will talk about them tomorrow night. One is to give food stamps to non-citizens, a Democrat idea that needs a lot of opposition on the ground from us. And the other is to change Oregon statute from referring to the term in state statute refers to a militia. They want to change it to National Guard, and you'll see that it's actually just a clever attempt to undermine the Second Amendment. And frankly, it's a real diss towards the National Guard at the same time. So check it out. Jeff Krupp tomorrow night on Captive Audience, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. And you'll look forward to seeing whatever hat I can dig up. I will wear something new tomorrow night and keep it going. And if you guys have suggestions on hats I should go and obtain, don't hesitate to message me on the Captive Audience Facebook page or Twitter. I know I'll get those messages and I can see if there's something interesting I should pick up. Anyway, thank you. And please share this show with everyone you can. And I'll see you tomorrow night on the next episode of the Captive Audience. Have a great night, everyone.